Let's all stand, turn your hymnals to song number 380. Happy Sunday. Let's sing it out on that first verse. Here we go. We praise thee, O God, for the Son of thy love, for Jesus who died and is now gone above. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Revive us again. We praise thee, O God, for thy Spirit of light, who has shown us our Savior and scattered our night. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Revive us again. All glory and praise to the Lamb that was slain, who has borne all our sins and has cleansed every stain. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Revive us again. Revive us again. Fill each heart with thy love. May each soul be rekindled with fire from above. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, thine the glory. Revive us again. Great singing. You may be seated.
Amen. Well, good morning. Welcome to church. Glad you could make it this morning. It's a special time as we kick off our 2019 conference. So excited here to have the Merrills with us and Pastor Josh Merrill from Weatherford, Texas, Southside Baptist Church, and my friend. And just, but more than that, a great preacher and a great man of God, and just so excited to have him here, and Miss Lee and Miss Georgia. Excited for that. And so we're going to skip announcements in the growth class hour. We'll go through them next year. No, I'm giving next year. Next hour. Yeah, Josh is looking at me like, no, it's okay. He's basically threatened me last night, like I better get enough time. And he's like, no, it's okay. No, but I do want to make one announcement. And so if you're just coming in a little bit later, it's Brother Larry's birthday. Yeah. So super excited about that. And And so we've got birthday donuts there in the front and birthday orange juice kind of for those that are brave enough to make it out to growth class at 9:30. And of course, we have our potluck after the worship service. And then we'll have move our evening service to the afternoon directly after. So it'll just be a great day in church. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And so without any more ado, I'm going to give a proper introduction to Brother Josh during the worship service. But just know that he about Jesus. He is. I'm honored to call him my friend, and thankful to have them here. And I'm just looking forward to being preached at. And so, if you would just introduce your wife and Georgia as well when you come up here, Brother Josh.
Thank you, sir. Is this on? Can you hear this? No one ever has complained about not being able to hear me, even without a microphone, so we will see. I am glad to be here this morning. Is that me? Okay. Well, there could be worse problems right there than having a crock pot go off. Anyway, well, I am excited to be here, and I'm thankful to have my wife, and this is our middle daughter, Georgia, and we have just gotten back from Alaska. We flew in from Alaska last night. We flew up there last week on Monday take her for a trip. We thought we were going to go on a ski trip, but Alaska was warmer than Texas this week, and so it rained on us the entire week. Poured down. We skied in the rain, which I'd never done before, so it was kind of like water skiing, snow skiing mix. But we had a great time anyway. Got to go whale watching, and Georgia thoroughly enjoyed that. It was a great time. And she was not ready for the boat, I don't think. But anyway, we had a great time on our trip, and we're thankful to be back here. We've been looking forward to this part of our trip especially, and I was excited. Brother Joel and Miss Christelle have been friends of ours. I don't know how long. I was trying to think back this morning. We met them at a spiritual leadership conference in California probably 15 years ago, something like that. Maybe not that long. Seems like a long time, maybe, but anyway, it seems like a long time. But our friendship has just grown closer and closer over the years, and now they're some of our best friends. I don't know what that says about us, that our best friends live all the way across the country, but in any case, we're very thankful to be here with them, and I'm thankful to get the chance to preach to y'all. Anytime that you get to preach to someone else's church and their congregation, it's a huge privilege and a very awesome responsibility. I know that he has invested a lot of prayer and has high hopes, and his dreams are pinned on the outcome of this meeting, and so I certainly want the Lord to be able to use this meeting to achieve his will in your hearts. Now, I'm going to say this. This is a missions conference. Is that right? Am I come to the right place? So this is a missions conference. And so one of the main purposes of a missions conference is to increase the level of financial support that your church gives or has available to give to church planners and missionaries. That's the bottom line goal of a missions conference, is to raise money to be able to give to church planners and missionaries. In the church I pastor, for example, my goal for our church is that our annual missions giving goes up year after year after year after year, so that we can constantly be taking on new missionaries, or if not taking on new missionaries, that we can at least be giving them cost of living increases every year. I don't think a lot of churches have stopped to consider these missionaries go on the field. They raise $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month to go on the field, and then that was in 1980 that they did that. Now they've been on the field 35 years or whatever, and they still have the same amount of support, and the cost of living goes up there just like it does everywhere else. And I was in Uganda not long ago, and a couple years ago, I guess now, and I was just amazed at the transformation of their country, and they were amazed at how fast things are going. Things that you couldn't buy a few years ago now are available, and so the cost of everything is just going up. And so, as churches, supporting churches, we have to be able to give more money to those things just to maintain standards of living and to maintain ministry effectiveness. That has to take place. So that's a big part of our goals, to raise money. But I'm just going to tell you, as I start out this morning, that no preacher likes to preach on money. Okay? Money is a very sensitive subject. Not just in Seattle, but anywhere that you go in the country, money is a sensitive subject. Every preacher that I know, myself included, has heard the complaint, I don't like to come to church because all they ever do is talk about money. Now, I don't know if they make that face when they do it, but that's what it sounds like when you're listening to it. All they ever do is talk about money. And the truth is that's really not true. And I know that it isn't true. Most of the time that complaint comes from people who aren't faithful in their giving anyway, and they want to justify their own sloth and selfishness on the preacher. So they accuse him of something he's not doing. But whether it's real or not, that complaint gets said a lot. And so churches get a reputation for that, and no preacher likes it. Every preacher that I know, I'll talk for this preacher because I know this one best, but every preacher that I know likes to be liked. You know, there's no preacher that I know that doesn't want to be accepted, doesn't want to be liked, and so there's a tendency, a strong tendency within us to never preach about money because you just don't want that reputation. You don't want that albatross hung around your neck to feel like that. But the problem is that's not biblical either. It's just not biblical. Okay? In reality, for a preacher to be Christ-like, he must preach about money. He must. Why do I say that? Because Jesus preached about money. In fact, this might shock you. If you're not up to date on your Bible trivia, this is something that you might like to know. Jesus preached about money more than he preached about heaven. Jesus preached about money more than he preached about hell. Jesus preached about money more than he preached about the family. Did you know that? I mean, we think family, that's important. That's the big thing. Yeah, it's important. Jesus preached about money more than that, though. Jesus preached about money more than he preached on any other single subject. It's the most frequent topic that comes up in the preaching of Jesus is preaching on money. So, even if I or any other preacher were always preaching about money, we'd be in some pretty good company. We'd be in the company of Jesus because that's what he preached about more than anything else. But I'm not trying to come at it from that angle this morning. I want to come at it from a different angle. I want to come at this, I want to address money for the same reason, basically, that Jesus preached about money, and that is that money is a spiritual issue. Money is a spiritual issue. And the reason I say that money is a spiritual issue is because the way that you use money and the way that you invest your money is a perfect reflection of the condition and priorities of your heart. That's the bottom line. It is therefore the single best indicator of where you stand. The way that you use your money is the best indicator of where you stand in the relation, in your discipleship to Jesus. The way that you use your money perfectly indicates that. So is everybody with me so far? Pretty simple stuff. All right? So let's get started. Let's open our Bibles to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6. Let's look at a verse that everybody knows, but it's one I think that's helpful to be reminded of. Matthew chapter 6 and verse number 21. The Bible says, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. All right, so let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this morning. I'm thankful for everyone who's gotten up and made their way to Grow Class. And Lord, this is probably the core of the church, people who sacrifice time in bed and other things to get up and be in your house and to meet with your people. And Lord, I pray that you will bless them for their efforts to put you first. God, help us to recognize that there's more than just time, though, in which we have to put you first. Our finances are a reflection of our life. And so I pray that you'll help us to recognize that and to accept the implications thereof. Lord, please bless in this hour. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. As much as any other verse in the Bible, Matthew 6:21 makes clear why we need to talk about money, right? This is the bottom line. The reason we must talk about money is that it moves the conversation away from one of merely needs or obedience, both of which are important, right? Needs, there are legitimate needs. If you're going to be a church planner, you have to have money. This building costs money, right? Everything costs money. I heard you spent 30 grand on moving your wall, and I like that. It's a pretty wall, so that's good, all right? So you have to spend money. It takes a lot of money to do this. Giving is an issue of obedience. We are commanded to give. We're commanded to be generous, even to the point of sacrifice. All of those things are important. But I want to move away from those, even though those are important and valid. This verse sets the issue of giving and makes it an issue of a heart condition, of spirituality. That's what's going on here. And see, the reason that Jesus could make this statement is because the reason that we use our money and the decisions that we make about what to purchase with it, these are accurate indicators of spiritual maturity and godliness. The reason that is so is because we exchange our life for money, right? That's really what's going on. We are trading every day. When you get up and go work in your job and so on and so forth, you're trading your life, your skills, your abilities, your labor in exchange for that money. Therefore, whatever you use to purchase with that money, that is an indication that's what your life is about. That's what you've given your life to, is whatever you spend that money for. All right? So your money represents the real you. That's why God cares about it. Your money represents the real you. That's why God cares about it. Therefore, what's in our heart is put on display every time that you pay for something, all right? And so, let's consider what the Scriptures would have us do with it and how we should think about it, all right? In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul reminds us of the proper paradigm, proper way to think about money, when he takes us back to the Old Testament, he uses the book of Psalms, chapter 24. I want you to go there very quickly. Psalm 24. You needn't stay in Matthew. We're not going to come back there. But in Psalm 24, look at verse number 1. Paul is quoting this verse in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 26. And he says this, Psalm 24 and verse 1. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. All right? The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. All right? So here's what you need to take away from this. God owns everything. That's the starting premise when you're going to give, is that God owns all things. Everything, including everything that you possess, is actually owned by God. Well, I don't believe that. Well, I'm sorry if you don't believe that. You don't have a biblical worldview. But if you're going to take the Bible for what it says, then God owns everything, all right? God says, and God has reminded, not just you, in Exodus chapter 19 and verse 5, you don't need to go there, but God told Moses, all the earth is mine. There's nothing, Moses, that I don't own, doesn't belong to me. In case that's not clear enough, he says it to Job in chapter 41, verse 11. Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. Everything that exists anywhere in the world is God's. It belongs to God, and you don't, it's just where we have to start from. So here's what that means. This is logic. Just keep it really simple, though. Nobody ever accuses me of being too deep, right? Here's logic, okay? If God owns everything, that means that you own how much? You don't own anything, okay? See how deep that was? Yeah, I had to be real careful not to get over people's head with that. But I'm just saying, if God owns everything, then we don't own anything. Rather, instead of being owners thereof, you and I are managers of it. Okay, it's under our control. It's ours to do with and to use, but it doesn't belong to us. The Bible word for this is we are stewards. Stewards of what God owns. Now, you might think back to the story of Joseph. If you're a Bible reader, you'll know the story of Joseph, Genesis chapters 37 to 50. And you remember the story, what happened to Joseph. His brothers were jerks, and they threw him in a pit, and then decided, hey, this is not going to make us any money, so they pulled him out, sold him into slavery into Egypt, gave him to some Ishmaelites who took him there and sold him to Potiphar. And Potiphar was the, kind of the head of the secret service in Egypt, and a wealthy man had lots of stuff, and Joseph became steward in Potiphar's house. What that meant was that Joseph had access to everything that Potiphar owned, and it was his responsibility to manage Potiphar's resources for Potiphar's interest, for his benefit, right? And so Joseph took everything that Potiphar had, and he was able to use them. And of course, in being his steward, Joseph was able to use Potiphar's resources for his own maintenance, right? He got to eat Potiphar's food and drink of his water, ride his camel, sit in his chariot, whatever he had to do to take care of his responsibilities. But it never occurred to Joseph, well, all these things are mine. This is my chariot, this is my camel. No, he realized everything I have, I get to benefit from it, but this actually belongs to Potiphar, and my job is to use these resources to increase his wealth, to increase his standing, to advance his interests. That was what his purpose was. And friend, that is exactly the image that God has of us. We manage, we're able to use the things that God has provided for our own benefit to some extent, to maintain our lifestyle and so on and so forth, but it's primarily to be used for His benefit. God wants us to use and enjoy the things He's allowed us to have, but as stewards, we must remember that they belong to Him and they are primarily to be used for His work. If you don't start with that mindset, you're never going to end up in the biblical place. That's where we have to begin, right? So, the house that you own, it's God's house. You need to think about that. You need to be recognize that every resource that you have, not just the cash in your wallet, but everything, has to be used for God's glory. Your car, it's actually God's car. You get to drive it, but it's actually God's car. The food in your cabinet belongs to God. The books on your shelves, or the lack thereof in some cases, right? Okay, the books on your shelves are God's books. God owns everything, and we're His students, or His stewards rather. And just to reinforce this fact, consider for a second that everything that you are presently calling yours, somebody else either was or very soon will be calling theirs. My house was somebody else's house, and very soon will be someone else's house. Okay, the land that you own, pretty soon somebody else will be calling it my land or their land, whatever the case may be. All right? We are everything that we have is temporarily ours. It's going to remain, but we're going to be off the scene. And we need to recognize ultimately it belongs to God. Right? We're just temporary stewards. And look, I'm beating this over and over, and I realize that I'm not saying anything that none of this is shocking. None of this is news to anyone. I realize that. All of us know this theoretically. But the problem is that how we give to the Lord and how we use our money shows whether or not it's just theoretical or if it's actually penetrated into our heart. And there's a big difference between knowing something and actually knowing something. Whether we genuinely believe this. And God has specifically said not only that He owns all the things, God says that He owns the money in your bank account and the cash in your wallet. Did you know that? Haggai chapter 2 and verse 8 says this, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine." The actual currency God owns, said the Lord of hosts. So the question is not, once you come down and realize that, the question shifts from saying, well, how much of my money should I give to God? The question should actually be, how much of God's money should I keep for myself? These are totally different questions. Totally different ways to think about things. Okay? How much of God's money should I keep for myself? When you put your check or your cash in the offering plate, you should give it with the belief that everything you have belongs to Him and with the commitment to use every bit of your resources in the way that God wants. In a way that will glorify and honor Him. That must be the objective. If that's not the objective, we're starting with the wrong premise. We're going to end up in the wrong place. Okay? So let's take it one step further. If it's true that everything that we have belongs to God, then here's the question. Why does my giving it please God? right? I mean, he owns it anyway. It's not like God's up there going, man, I'm sure hungry. I wish somebody would give me some money. I mean, God is not in need. I think it's so comical. I just read Homer's Odyssey. Anybody ever read that? It's a good book. Actually, it's kind of a weird book, but the Iliad and the Odyssey. But they're filled with gods, and like Pallas Athena and all these different gods, and they all have needs. These gods have needs. So basically, everything is a quid pro quo. You know, if you'll do something for the god, then she'll do something for you. You scratch her back, and she'll scratch yours. And so, if you are going to take a ship voyage, you know, across the Mediterranean, then you have to please Neptune so that he doesn't do something to your ship and cause you to have a bad voyage. Or you have to do something to Athena so that she'll give you favor in this situation or that situation. She has needs that you have to meet, and then you have needs that you want her to meet. God is not like that. God is not up there saying, man, I'm sure kind of down this week. I hope the singing is good on Sunday. You know, God never has a down day. God doesn't need anything that you have. If he were hungry, he wouldn't tell you. You couldn't do anything about it anyway, right? So God doesn't have needs like these other weird gods, the gods of man's design. He's not like that. God is ase. He doesn't need anything that we have. So why does giving please him? We're not satisfying anything that God has, or that God needs. So why does our giving please him? Well, first of all, giving reflects faith. God doesn't need for you to believe in him for him to exist, but faith does please him. You're not giving, he that cometh to God must believe that he is. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. He that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he's a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Faith pleases God. And so faith, giving reflects faith in God's provision. You think about it. When you're willing to voluntarily relinquish control over your money and instead give that power to control the funds and the resources to God, that's a powerful indication of how much trust you have in him to provide for your needs. You're actually realizing, I don't own this. I'm dependent upon him. That's why giving is a reflection of this. It shows that I recognize this is his, and I need him, not this. See? That's what all this comes down to. And this is well illustrated by the story of the widow's mite. Let's go over to Mark chapter 12, please. Mark chapter 12. I know that you know these things, but let's just look at them again. Mark chapter 12, and look in verse 41. Okay? Wow, I didn't realize we have the things on the screen. This is high tech. Good job. I still use paper, and so I like this part. In any case, Mark chapter 12, verse 41. Jesus sat over against the treasury and beheld how the people cast money into the treasury. Now, that's a scary verse. You ever think about that? God watches how you give. When you think about that, or how you don't give, and he watches. People don't think that, but God is paying attention. And the Bible says he walks in the midst of his churches, right? He's here this morning walking up and down the aisles looking at you, and he knows when it's time to give the offering. He's watching how you give. He was watching how they gave. And notice what he says. Watching how people cast in the treasury, and many that were rich cast in much. So they gave a lot of money. Now, I'm for that. I want the rich to give much. Amen. Okay? But there came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 mites that make a farthing. If you've never seen a mite, it's a little smaller than your pinky fingernail. It's little bitty, and it doesn't amount to much. I mean, it's like a fraction of a cent. They're tiny and not worth anything. And he called unto him his disciples, though, and saith unto them, Verily I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than all they which have cast in the treasury. Don't you know the disciples were like, what? She did what? Could barely hear the sound of these 2 little mites as they tinkle in the little coffers there. But he said, she's given more than all of these that have cast in the treasury. Why? for all they did cast in of their abundance. But she of her want, so she doesn't have anything else, did cast in all her living. Right? So here's this poor widow woman, and she is willing to give everything she has to live on. This is it. Everything that she has to live on. Now, why would she do that? How could she do that? I mean, if anybody says, oh, I can't afford it, this woman literally cannot afford it. But why is she able to do this? Because her confidence is not in this, it's in God to provide for her needs. Her giving reflected faith that really who was providing for her is God and not self. And that kind of giving pleased the Lord. The recognition that God is the one who is sustaining me, providing for me, caring for me, and not myself, that kind of knowledge, that kind of faith, that kind of giving pleased the Lord. And it still pleases the Lord. Okay? Friends, we are going to give to the extent that we believe God will provide for us. We are going to give to the extent that you believe God will provide for you. So if you're not giving, you don't believe that God will provide for you. It's just that simple. The more that we are willing to risk, the more faith, the more confidence that God's going to provide for this, then the more free we are with our finances. Conversely, the less we trust God, the less we give to Him. Now, I'm hesitant to tell this story because I don't want you to take the wrong idea from it. But I'm telling it anyway because I think I can get you to understand the point. I have a pastor friend who decided with his family, I mean, they made a corporate decision as a family, that they just wanted to give everything that they made for an entire month to God. So they didn't hold back any part. They just signed their salary check and put it in the offering. They didn't keep any. Now, I want to be careful because I don't want you to get the idea that God expects that. He doesn't. Nowhere does God teach you to do that. Okay, that's not an expectation. God says, boy, if you really love me, you would do this. He doesn't say that. Okay, and I don't want anybody to take that principle from it. Nor do I think that we should put God to the test. God specifically says that it's evil to tempt God that way, like when Jesus was on the pinnacle of the temple and the devil said, cast thyself down, see if God will take care of you. That's wrong, okay? Because true faith doesn't have to put someone to the test. You test when you don't trust, right? When you're not sure that the chair will hold you, you are careful to sit down and you touch it, but actually I'm still carrying all the weight, right? You test when you don't believe. So I'm not saying that. But they did believe that God would provide, so they weren't worried about it. Let's just give our whole salary. And towards the end of the month, they were running on fumes. Can I say it that way? Cupboards are basically empty. Refrigerators about out. And they haven't told a soul. They've just said, God, we want to give and we want you to provide. You know what happened at the end of the month when they're out of everything else? This lady in their church came by and knocked on their door, and when they opened it, she was standing there with bags of groceries. And they were blown away. How did you know? And of course, she didn't know anything. She just wanted to be a blessing to her pastor. God providentially provided through her. And the reality is, whether we want to admit it or not, our giving, our willingness to risk is a direct and tangible indication of how much faith we have that God will provide. I encourage you, grow not in your giving, but in your reliance, your dependence upon God. Because if you have that, this is easy. Okay? All right, let's finish with some of the characteristics of godly givers. Okay? Since Jesus used the widow at the treasury, let's analyze her giving here for just a second. If anything can be learned from her, I think it is on this, that giving to God is not just for those who can afford it. Giving is not just for those who think, well, I can afford it. She had nothing, friends. Nothing. And yet she gave, I'll use two words here. She gave generously. Can we agree with that? And she gave sacrificially. Because she gave everything she had. So she's giving generously and she's giving sacrificially. And the Apostle Paul highlights those two traits in his example in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Let's go over there really quickly. I know everybody knows this passage. You can't even go to a missions conference unless you read this. It's not official. So I'm reading this passage just to get it out of the way. But 2 Corinthians chapter 8, look in verse 1. Paul highlights this example. He tells the poor Christians in Macedonia about how they gave and how they gave generously to him. Look at what he says in verse 1. Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God. So we do you to wit. We want you to know about the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. How that in a great trial of affliction. Now there's controversy over what the trial of affliction was, but basically we know this, they were broke. In a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty, I mean, underline those words, their deep poverty. I don't think Paul was given to hyperbole too much. Deep poverty. These people are flat broke, okay? Yet it abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power, I bear record, yea, and beyond their power, they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. And this they did, not as we hoped, but first gave their own selves to the Lord and unto us by the will of God. All right, so let's just stop here and break this down. These Macedonians were people whom Paul described as living in deep poverty. I mean, they don't have anything. And yet, their extreme poverty, something in them welled up, some spirit welled up into the point of rich generosity. Because the Bible says this, Paul says this, they gave not only as much as they gave, first of all, as much as they were able, and they wanted to give even more. Look in the verse again, okay? It says, verse 3, for I bear to their power, I bear record, yea, and beyond their power. So to their power is they gave everything they could, and beyond their power they were willing. They wanted to give even more. If they had more, they would have done more. But they gave everything that they could, all right? And friend, just like these people, our giving, Paul uses them as an example, and he's writing to us for us to follow their example. And basically the two principles are our giving should be sacrificial and generous. It should be sacrificial and generous. So when it comes to missions giving, God is not concerned how much this church gives. Okay, I want you to understand that. God is not saying, boy, when you reach $1 million in giving, now you've arrived. God could not care less about that. God does not need your money at all. I mean, all money exists. He could create it just like that. He doesn't need more money. But what he does want is this spirit. He's concerned that you get to the place where you're generous to the point of sacrifice. Now, let's stop and talk about something. Because I want to remind you that giving isn't sacrificial unless it's a sacrifice. This seems to escape a lot of people. I don't understand this, but giving is not sacrificial unless it's a sacrifice. And many people's definition of sacrifice is some strange thing, okay? I would say probably most Christians give what could legitimately be called token offerings. Token offerings. Very few give sacrificially. I was reading a Gallup poll. I was doing some research on this. And I read a Gallup poll, and I don't remember when this was taken. It's not that long ago. It's fairly recent. But it showed that the more money that Americans make, the less they give to charity. Did you know that? Now, that's a very dangerous indicator in a town like Bellevue, because this is the high-income earning part of the country. Can we agree with that? It doesn't take rocket science to figure this out. People in this area make a lot of money. And so you're in a dangerous culture. Because if you want to live biblically, you're going to have to swim against the tide in this area. Because the more money people make, the less that they tend to give. For example, those making less than $10,000 a year, can we agree? They're not wealthy, okay? I mean, they're poor where I come from, all right? They're certainly poor around here. That's like 1 month's rent, all right? This is terrible. They have no money, and yet, on average, they give 2.8% of their giving, of their total income, to charity, churches, and other nonprofits. 2.8. Now, I just want to go ahead and say, gag me with a spoon. 2.8 is pathetic. Can we agree with that? But that's the high end. That's the high end. 2.8. Less than 3% of their total income is given to charities, churches, and other nonprofits. When it goes up to be making between $10,000 and $30,000, they give 2.5. It's going down. When they get to be, between $30,000 and $50,000, it goes all the way down to 2%. Those making $50,000 to $75,000 give a total of 1.5% of their income to the church and other nonprofits. So it goes from bad to much, much worse as you increase in giving. Now, friends, wouldn't you agree with me? This is not that really deep math that everyone's going to have a special degree to follow. But wouldn't you agree that if we're making more money but giving a smaller percentage than we were before, we're not giving sacrificially, are we? You know what's happening? We're sacrificing our giving on the altar of more stuff for self. What other conclusion can you draw? You're controlling for all the variables. The taxes aren't changing. What's changing is lifestyle. As we have more money, we want more stuff. I'm not satisfied with the car I had, and I have to have a new car, I have to have a nicer house, I have to have these things, and I'm sacrificing my giving to the Lord and the things that He cares about so that I can indulge self. And you're not making a sacrifice. You're not giving sacrificially unless you're making a sacrifice. We just need to come to grips with this, okay? We need to be very careful as Americans how we think about these issues. And giving 2.8%, you're not killed a bear then, friends. You know, this is not much, right? I'm pretty sure, I hear people say things like this. Please don't say this around me because I'll think that you don't know very much, okay? People say, well, I tithe 2%. No. Okay, you need to understand, what is a tithe? Does anybody know what a tithe means? What does the word tithe mean? It means a tenth. So it's not physically possible to tithe 2%. Okay? You tithe or you give 2%, but you don't tithe 2%. Okay? You tithe 10%, okay, of your income. That's the floor, not the ceiling. That's the floor. And then from there, then you can give. I haven't covered that, but this might be a good time, I guess. What time do we need to get out of here? Right now? 2 minutes? Okay. So I won't cover that now. But you need to understand, you need to tithe first, and then we start giving. Okay? And then finally, so we should give sacrificially, we should give generously, and then finally, our giving should be viewed as an investment. Okay? I have never known anyone who gave sacrificially, whether one time or consistently, who regretted it. Nobody regrets this. They regret not giving more. Now, you may miss out on some of the other things that you could have had. by definition, if you're giving sacrificially, you will. Okay? But the joy and the fulfillment that you get in the process is more than anything that you could have gained had you kept the money for self. And I'll give you a classic example of this. You know, imagine a mom or a dad who is standing at the graduation ceremony of their child in college. And they're watching their child walk across the stage and receive their diploma, or watch them as they're standing there at the altar getting married and they have some godly spouse, or watching the child do anything that makes their eyes wet with the joys of tear. If you go to that mom or that dad and say, yeah, this is great, but think of all the sleepless nights that child has caused you and all the diapers and the tens of thousands of dollars that you could have spent on yourself had you not had that kid. What is the parent? I mean, they look at you cross-eyed like, what is the matter with you? It's worth every penny, wasn't it? Is it a sacrifice? Yes, but it's a sacrifice that is worth it. And every dime that you invest in the Lord is worth it. And best, you're going to get something back in eternity that dwarfs anything that you could have purchased in this life. The same way, when you sacrifice to invest in the Lord's work, you will never regret it. So I'm going to summarize this message in 3 things. Number 1, okay, you are, 3 points to remember this. Number 1, you are His steward. Everything that you own actually belongs to God, and you are His steward. Number 2, because that's the case, your giving needs to reflect faith in His provision. You are His steward, so does your giving reflect faith in His provision? And number 3, are you generous to the point of sacrifice? Those are the 3 takeaways that you need to start with before you even consider what to do in a missions conference. This is where you need to begin. Right here. You are His steward. Your giving should reflect faith in His provision, and it must be generous to the point of sacrifice. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we love you this morning. God, thank you for your word. The simple principles therein clarify everything about our life. God, this is not complicated. It's not an issue of knowledge. It's an issue of faith. It's an issue of relationship. It's an issue of discipleship. If we belong to you, if we trust you, if we are depending upon you, if we have your character in our life, we will give the way that you gave. I pray that you would speak to hearts this morning, tenderize us in this message so that we're prepared for the rest of them. I pray that you'll speak to hearts in the rest of the preaching. I pray that we'll have guests in the services and that those who need to make decisions will do so. In Jesus' name, amen.
A break before service. Just a reminder, though, faith in His provision also means that you're going to be content in how He provides. A lot of times we miss that, and thinking faith in His provision means He's going to give me what I didn't have and what I really want. But it means that I'm going to be content in that. Thank you, Brother Josh. So appreciate that. And it fits with our normal growth class series right now, Stewarding Life. And so, amen. All right, so we'll be back at it here in 13 minutes.